Before the rise of empires, before the echo of philosophers in marble halls, there was an age not ruled by gods, but marked by the footprints of mortals. They were not ordinary, they were not yet myth. They were heroes, flesh and blood, but touched by the divine. And in their stories, humanity found not perfection, but possibility. In the twilight years, after the titanomachy and the settling of Olympus, the gods no longer warred among themselves. Instead, they turned their gaze to the world below. It was not only the affairs of gods and titans that would shape the fate of Greece, but the bold, flawed, and defiant mortals who carried the legacy of both divine and human blood. Among the earliest and brightest was Perseus, a prince with a destiny forged not by ambition, but by necessity. His story begins in the land of Argos, where a king, Acrisius, feared a prophecy more than he loved his blood. The oracle had spoken. He would be killed by his own grandson. In a desperate act to cheat fate, he locked his daughter Danae in a tower of bronze, sealed from the world. But fate, as the gods often say, cannot be caged. Zeus, in the form of golden light, entered her prison, and Danae bore a son, Perseus. King Acrisius, horrified, cast mother and child into the sea in a wooden chest. Yet the waves, perhaps guided by Poseidon's subtle hand, delivered them safely to the island of Seriphos, where a kind fisherman, Dictys, took them in. Years passed, and Perseus grew strong, unaware of the threads of fate tightening around him. When the island's ruler, Polydectes, sought Danae for himself, he plotted to rid himself of her son. Pretending to marry another, he demanded a gift from all men on the island, knowing Perseus, poor and proud, could not refuse a challenge. "I will bring you the head of Medusa," Perseus declared, perhaps in jest, perhaps in fury. Polydectes smiled. Medusa was no ordinary monster. Once a maiden of beauty, she had been cursed by Athena for her pride and violation in the temple. Her hair became serpents, her gaze turned men to stone. She lived with her sisters, the Gorgons, on the edge of the known world. To seek her was to seek death. Yet Perseus set out. The gods, watching, saw the honesty in his resolve. Athena, perhaps out of guilt or foresight, lent him a polished shield. Hermes gave him a curved blade, sharp enough to cleave stone. But it was the Grey, the three ancient sisters who shared one eye and one tooth, who told him where to find the tools he truly needed. The helm of Hades for invisibility, winged sandals for swiftness, and a pouch to carry what could not be gazed upon. With these, he reached the lair of the Gorgons. As Medusa slept, her sisters coiled protectively around her. Perseus, guided by the reflection in Athena's shield, approached. He dared not meet her eyes. One strike, quick and sure, and the deed was done. Her head, even severed, retained its power. He placed it carefully in the pouch, avoiding its gaze. But the Gorgons screamed. They pursued him through cloud and sea. But Perseus flew, swift and unseen, bearing a weapon now feared even by gods. His return was not without detour. On the way home, he encountered a chained princess, Andromeda, condemned to die for her mother's vanity. A sea monster approached, summoned by Poseidon to punish pride. Perseus, moved not only by beauty, but by justice, used Medusa's head to turn the beast to stone. Andromeda was saved. The hero had his prize, not only a trophy, but a queen. When Perseus returned to Seriphos, Polydectes mocked him still, until the head of Medusa turned him too to stone. Justice was served. His mother was free. Later, in a contest of sport, a stray discus thrown by Perseus would strike and kill Acrisius. The prophecy fulfilled despite every effort to stop it. The hero, horrified, would renounce the throne and leave Argos behind. His story, unlike that of many heroes, ended not in tragedy, but in legacy. He founded cities. He ruled wisely. And in the stars, the gods placed him. Perseus, the slayer of Gorgons, a constellation to remind mortals that courage, even born from injustice, can shape destiny. He was the first of the great heroes, but he would not be the last. In the shadow of legends past, a new name rose, not born of quiet cunning like Perseus, but of strength forged in pain. He was not just a man, nor entirely a god. He was Herakles, the child of thunder and mortal flesh, destined to carry the weight of both. His beginning was not peaceful. Zeus, in another of his endless pursuits, had disguised himself as Amphitryon to lie with Alcmene, a mortal woman. From that union came Herakles, whose name, ironically, meant glory of Hera. But Hera, queen of the gods, did not see him as glory. She saw only betrayal. And so, from the moment of his birth, Herakles was cursed. While still in his cradle, Hera sent serpents to kill him. The infant gripped one in each fist and crushed them before they could strike. Even then, he was a being shaped not by fear, but defiance. As he grew, Herakles became known for his unmatched strength and unpredictable temper. He trained in music, warfare, and wisdom, but none could tame the storm inside him. Hera, ever watching, ensured his path was marked by sorrow. When he reached manhood, she struck. Under her influence, Herakles was driven mad and killed his wife, Megara, and their children, in a fit of divine madness. When the fog lifted and he saw what he had done, he did not plead innocence. He sought atonement. The oracle of Delphi, speaking through Apollo, told him that redemption would come through 12 impossible labors set by King Eurystheus, a weak man hidden behind walls who feared Herakles but relished his suffering. Thus began the 12 labors of Herakles, feats so legendary they would echo through millennia. The first was the Nemean lion, a beast with a hide no blade could pierce. Herakles wrestled it with bare hands, strangling it, then skinned it, using the creature's own claws. From then on, he wore its pelt as armor. Next came the Lernaean hydra, a serpent with many heads, each one that was severed growing 2 in its place. With the help of his nephew Iolaus, Herakles cauterized each neck after cutting, ending its reign of terror. The breath of the hydra was poison, and from its blood, Herakles dipped his arrows. The third labor was to capture the Ceryneian hind, a golden deer sacred to Artemis. He chased it for a year before finally capturing it unharmed, appeasing the goddess and proving his restraint. Then came the Erymanthian boar, a creature of wild fury. Herakles drove it into the snow and carried it alive to Eurystheus, who cowered in a jar at the sight of it. The fifth labor was perhaps the most humiliating, cleaning the Augean stables. These stables, housing thousands of cattle, had not been cleaned in decades. Herakles diverted 2 rivers through them, cleansing them in a single day, but was denied credit because he had used his mind, not just his might. The sixth was the Stymphalian birds, deadly creatures with bronze feathers that could kill. With the aid of Athena, Herakles used a rattle to scare them into flight and shot them down. Each task tested more than his strength. They tested cunning, patience, resolve. They tested his humanity. Labor 7 was the Cretan bull, wild and untamed. Herakles wrestled it and brought it to the mainland. The 8th was capturing the man-eating mares of Diomedes. Some say Herakles fed their master to them, sating their hunger long enough to tame them. The ninth was to fetch the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. What began as a gift turned to battle when Hera spread lies. Herakles fought his way free, sorrowful for the blood spilled. The 10th was to steal the cattle of Geryon, a three-bodied giant, from across the sea. Herakles slew him and his monstrous guard dog and drove the herd back to Greece, fighting off bandits and gods alike. But Eurystheus, still fearful, claimed two of the labors did not count, those of the Hydra and the stables, and demanded two more. The 11th was the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by nymphs and the 100-headed dragon, Ladon. Herakles, unsure where to find them, sought advice from Prometheus himself, now freed by Zeus. Some say he even held the heavens for a time, trading burdens with Atlas in a cunning ruse to gain the fruit. The final task was the most harrowing, to descend into the underworld and capture Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of Hades. Herakles, armored in resolve, descended without weapon. Hades agreed Herakles could take the beast if he used only his strength. And so he did, dragging Cerberus into the light. Each labor had changed him. Not just his body, now scarred and powerful, but his soul. He had committed great sins, and through great suffering he had earned not erasure, but redemption. Though Herakles lived beyond the labors, they defined him. He fought in battles, married again, fathered children. But his end came not by blade, but by poison. The blood of the Hydra turned against him, given unknowingly by his wife. In agony, he built his own pyre. No one dared light it. But then came Philoctetes, a friend, who set the flame, and was given Herakles' bow in thanks. The gods, watching, were moved. Zeus struck the pyre with lightning, and Herakles ascended, no longer mortal, but divine. On Olympus, he was granted a place among the gods, and even Hera, in time, forgave. In Herakles, they saw not a hero of might, but one of struggle and perseverance. To this day, his name means more than strength. It means the will to rise, no matter how many times one has fallen. In a city bound by tribute and fear, one man dared to defy the cycle. He was not guided by divine blood or burdened by a prophecy. His name was Theseus, and his legend began not with monsters, but with a choice. The choice to walk toward danger when others turned away. Theseus was the son of Aegeus, king of Athens, and Aethra, a mortal woman. His early life was quiet, raised away from the palace in Troezen. But when he came of age, his mother led him to a rock beneath which lay a sword and sandals, left there by his father as a test. Theseus lifted the stone with ease, took the tokens, and set out for Athens by land, choosing the dangerous road filled with bandits and beasts. Along the way, he proved his courage not by avoiding danger, but by confronting it. He defeated Periphetes the club-bearer, Sinis the tree-bender, and Siren, who kicked travelers into the sea to be eaten by a giant turtle. Each foe fell not just to strength, but cleverness. By the time he reached Athens, he was a hero in deeds, though still unknown to the city. Aegeus, unaware that this young man was his son, had married Medea, the same cunning sorceress who had once aided Jason. She recognized Theseus, and fearing for her influence, tried to poison him. But Aegeus, seeing the sword at the last moment, knocked the cup away and embraced his son. Peace, however, was not Athens' gift. Years earlier, King Minos of Crete had lost his son Androgeos while he was visiting Athens. In retaliation, He demanded a cruel tribute. Every 9 years, 7 Athenian boys and 7 girls were to be sent to Crete, fed to the Minotaur, a monstrous creature trapped in a labyrinth built by the genius Daedalus. When the next tribute came due, Theseus volunteered. He boarded the black-sailed ship, not to die, but to end the suffering. When they reached Crete, fate turned on a thread of love. Ariadne, daughter of Minos, saw Theseus and was captivated. In secret, she gave him a ball of thread and a sword, the tools he would need to survive the maze and its horror. The labyrinth was no mere maze. It was alive with silence, vast and shifting. Its walls echoed with the heavy breath of the Minotaur, a creature born of punishment and pride, half man and half bull, locked away by Minos, feared even by his own kin. Theseus entered the labyrinth, tying one end of the thread to the entrance. He moved with care, guided more by instinct than light. The air thickened with each step, and then the sound, breath, hoof, growl. The battle was brutal. The Minotaur charged, its horns tearing through stone. Theseus dodged, struck, fell, rose again. It was not a hero's clean victory, but a survivor's desperate one. At last, he drove the blade into the beast's heart, ending the cycle of death. Following the thread, he led the others out. But the tale didn't end with triumph. Theseus fled Crete with Ariadne, but on the island of Naxos, he left her behind. Why he did so is unclear. Some say a god commanded it, others that he feared her tie to Minos. Whatever the reason, Ariadne awoke alone, and Theseus sailed on. Grief chased him. As he approached Athens, he forgot to raise the white sails, a signal to his father that he had survived. Watching from the cliffs, Aegeus saw only black, and in despair threw himself into the sea that now bears his name. Theseus returned not to a father's embrace, but to a crown. He ruled Athens with wisdom and ambition, transforming it into a city of order. He unified Attica, introduced democracy in its early form, and stood for justice in a world ruled by power. Yet like many heroes, his end was quiet and sorrowful. He grew older, less certain, more isolated. Political enemies rose. One day, Theseus was exiled to the island of Skyros. There, betrayed and alone, he was pushed from a cliff, not by monster or god, but by man. His story became legend, a life of action and purpose, a hero forged not in Olympus, but in choice. Theseus was not the strongest or most divine, but he walked toward fear and carved his name into the stones of history. He showed that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to step forward despite it. In the windswept kingdom of Iolcus, a throne sat warm with deceit. A usurper named Peleus ruled, having taken the crown that was meant for another. But fate, as ever, does not forget. One day, a stranger with only one sandal walked into the palace, and the world shifted. His name was Jason. He had been hidden since childhood, raised by the wise centaur Chiron on the slopes of Mount Pelion. His uncle Peleus, fearing a prophecy that warned of a man wearing only one sandal, had tried to erase the line of rightful kings. But Jason returned, unbent and unafraid, and claimed his birthright. Peleus, wily and proud, posed a challenge. If Jason could retrieve the Golden Fleece, a mythical relic guarded at the edge of the known world, he would surrender the throne. It was a death sentence in disguise. The fleece hung in Colchis, watched over by a dragon that never slept. Jason accepted. He called upon the heroes of Greece, and they answered. From all corners came legends: Herakles, Orpheus the musician, Atalanta the huntress, Castor and Polydeuces, the divine twins, and many more. they built a ship named Argo, and together became the Argonauts. Their journey was more than a voyage. It was an odyssey of transformation. First, they sailed to Lemnos, an island ruled entirely by women. There, the Argonauts lingered too long, entangled in pleasure and distraction. But they moved on, remembering their goal. They faced the Harpies at the court of Phineus, a blind prophet tormented by these winged monsters who defiled his food. The Boreads, sons of the north wind, chased them away. In gratitude, Phineus warned the crew of the Symplegades, clashing rocks that crushed ships like insects. The Argonauts sent a dove through first. It emerged with only its tail feathers lost. Timing their passage, they rode with fury and slipped through just as the rocks collided. At last, they reached Colchis. There the golden fleece hung from a sacred tree, gleaming like fire. But King Aeetes, father of Medea, would not give it freely. He posed tasks no mortal could survive: yoke fire-breathing bulls, plow a field with dragon's teeth, and face the sleepless dragon that guarded the prize. Jason despaired, but Medea, daughter of Aeetes, priestess of Hecate, and sorceress of great power, saw Jason and loved him. Whether it was destiny or the god's whim, she chose him over her family. She gave him spells, charms, and advice. With her help, Jason yoked the bulls and sewed the teeth, from which sprang an army of warriors. But remembering Medea's counsel, he tricked them into fighting each other. Then, as the dragon reared, she used her magic to lull it into sleep. Jason took the fleece, soft, golden, and humming with ancient power, and they fled. Their escape was a trail of fire. Aeetes pursued them, so Medea bought time in the cruelest way. She killed her brother Apsyrtus and scattered his body in the sea, forcing her father to stop and gather the pieces for a proper burial. The gods did not look away. As they sailed home, they faced trial after trial. On Crete, the bronze giant Talos hurled boulders to sink the Argo. Medea bewitched him, finding the vein that held his life and ending it. In Libya, the ship was stranded in a desert sea. The crew carried it on their shoulders, walking for days, refusing to yield. At last, they returned. But Jason's triumph did not bring peace. He presented the fleece to Peleus, but the usurper refused to honor his promise. Medea, burning with rage, tricked Peleus's daughters into killing their father, thinking they were granting him eternal youth. Jason and Medea were exiled once again, this time to Corinth. There, time unraveled them. Jason, seeking power, promised marriage to a Corinthian princess. Medea, betrayed and broken, unleashed fury. In a tale that echoes with grief, she killed the new bride and their own children before vanishing in a chariot pulled by dragons. Jason's life dimmed. He lost his ship, his love, his future. Alone and forgotten, he returned to the rotting hull of the Argo. There, beneath its shadow, the beam fell, and so ended the life of a man who had once sought the impossible. But his name lived on. Jason was not perfect. He was not a god or a brute of strength. He was a man, led by ambition, shaped by others, broken by choices. His tale was one of adventure, yes, but also of cost. In the end, the fleece was golden, but the thread it unraveled was human. And so, the age of heroes gently fades into shadow, their stories etched not in marble, but in memory. They were mortals who walked with monsters, who defied kings and fate alike, and whose names became whispers on the lips of time. Though their journeys have ended, the echo of their courage still lingers, soft as the hush of wind through ancient stone, eternal as starlight over the Aegean. Let their tales guide you now, not as battles to be won, but as quiet truths to dream by.